quit this.
I quit. So we had to step away for a minute there because we just got back from seeing the 2019 remake of Black Christmas, not the 2006 remake, the new remake, which is just destined to be a holiday classic. I mean, this is going to be one to watch like over the years and just be cherished by all families. And
This
movie sucks. You know what it really reminded me of? When they released the Star Wars Holiday Special, that really terrible special that came out in 1978, there was a famous quote by George Lucas. He said, "If I had time and a sledgehammer, I would track down every single copy and smash it." Well, if I had time and a flamethrower, I would find every single copy of the Black Christmas remake and just burn it to fucking smithereens, because watching this was just a miserable experience. And
it's very painful. Very painful to watch.
So let's start with the trailer. So when I first saw the trailer, I noticed that this was a Blumhouse production. And I thought, okay, Blumhouse, they released the Happy Death Day movie. So what I thought they were going to do was put more of a comedic angle on the whole Black Christmas scenario. I thought it was going to be very tongue-in-cheek. I thought it was going to be a bit more lighthearted and kind of poke fun of itself. But no, this movie is completely straight-faced. The humor...
They tried to make it funny.
They tried.
Very miserably did.
This was hands down the worst screenplay, like, of 2019. Like, I'm not even kidding. Like, it was the preachiest, most patronizing, most terribly written movie of the entire year. And we're here to talk about it today. So... did you have like any excitement for this movie before going into the theater?
After seeing the trailer, I did think that this movie was going to be pretty good. Mm-hmm. I mean, like you said, it's a Blumhouse, and they've done Happy Death Day, and I really enjoyed the Happy Death Day movies. Mm-hmm. So I thought, okay, maybe this might be a really, really good film, going in with not the highest expectation, but at least somewhat of a enjoyable time with it. But yeah. I did not foresee how god-awful this movie would turn out to be, because... From the beginning, even. Like, it was just not even a build-up.
Okay, so the marketing basically said that this was going to be kind of a modern feminist take on the slasher genre, where you're going to have all these badass chicks who kind of turn the tables on these killers. They're going to outsmart them. And I even remember reading an interview with the director. She said that she had watched a number of horror movies where characters would just make the stupidest choices, and she wanted to make a movie where the characters would act smart and make the correct choices. So many of the characters in this movie make the most baffling decisions I've seen in a horror movie in a long time.
So they were doing everything that she pretty much said she didn't want to do.
Yeah.
At times.
Oh, yeah.
There was times I'm just sitting there wanting to just smack the crap out of some of these people. Like, what the heck are you doing?
Right. And, there is a way to approach this kind of material. If you want to do a modern feminist take on the slasher genre, absolutely. I'm all for it. But here's the thing. We've had some pretty strong horror female characters, like, over the decades. Like, the slasher genre hasn't always treated the female characters the best, particularly, like, the side characters. But we've also had heroines like Laurie Strode, Alice in Friday the 13th. Like,
even in Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah, even Olivia Hussey's character in the original Black Christmas was very strong-willed and independent. And that movie was actually very well written. It was layered. It had a lot of nuance. This movie was like a brick to the face. There was no subtlety. It was just incredibly on the nose. Every single line of dialogue was essentially either explaining what was going on, or a character would just say something about how terrible men are.
Oh my gosh. This movie was just so downgrading to men. Though.
Oh, yeah.
It was just like they were tearing them apart. Like, it's like, oh my gosh.
You know what it was like? It was like reading a very long and drawn-out lecture written by one of those obnoxious SJW Twitter accounts. Like, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
It really felt like that. Just no subtlety whatsoever. So, starting with the opening scene, I knew within the first 5 minutes what kind of movie this was going to be, because essentially what happens is that you have these sorority sisters having a little Christmas party.
Mm-hmm.
They're exchanging gifts, listening to music, and this one girl named Lindsay is walking back home from the library, and she's being followed by this guy who was like walking 2 feet behind her, and it's like, who would do that unless they were trying to be creepy?
Exactly. Well, and he kept looking up at her every time she looked back, so you thought, oh, okay, this guy's weird to begin with.
She's ready to punch this guy in the face with her keys.
I know, right? He's about to shank him.
And then what happens to this girl? Like, what happens in the rest of this opening scene?
So she pretty much turns around thinking it was the guy following her. She's about to shank him pretty much with her keys until he does a double turn, walks away. You find out, okay, this isn't the guy. So when she stands there for a second, looks back, and you get this guy with the black mask on right in front of her. She starts running. She's knocking on a door, knocking on doors, trying to get somebody to help her. Nobody's answering their doors. And then all of a sudden, she knocks on one door where somebody does open, but ends up being the black-faced killer. And, pretty much he comes out, which for some reason when he was killing her, I was wondering why the heck was she making a snow angel?
Oh, yeah.
That was kind of weird, but...
It was a decent overhead shot. Like, the image itself, wasn't, entirely awful. But, what we were talking about earlier, the director said she wanted to make a movie where the characters would make all these smart decisions. But for some reason, this girl does not have the intelligence to just run away. She literally offers herself to this killer.
Well, and my first thought was, you see this guy following you to begin with, you think he's going to be the one. I'd be walking a little bit faster. She's just walking normal. I'm like, why are you walking normal?
Yeah.
Start running. And then, she's got she gets these weird text messages too. DM, sorry. And then when she turns around and it's not the guy, I still would be a little freaked out. Like, okay, somebody's messaging me. So if it's not this guy, then who is it? And then she stands there, and it's like, what are you standing there for?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and then you can't forget the really weird scene, or that weird part in that scene where she gets a call from her friend.
Oh, we'll get to that.
Yeah, that was weird.
Oh, you're talking about like in the opening scene where she gets a call from her friend, and her friend basically tells her, hey, I got you something special for Christmas, so
gosh.
You'll never need a man to please you ever again.
That was weird. Like, what friend gives you that?
This is in the first 5 minutes, and
yes.
if this was meant to be a parody, this would be a decent opening scene, kind of showing the cliches of the slasher genre, but it's not. It's not. It is played completely straight, and the killer, I was thinking this throughout the entire movie, the killer looks like one of Lord Voldemort's Death Eaters in the Harry Potter movies, like the black hood,
It's like a black goldish mask.
Yeah.
Like the Death Eaters in Harry Potter.
And then we meet the other main characters. One of them is played by Imogen Poots, who is an incredible independent horror feature called Green Room. She's a talented actress, and her character has a somewhat decent backstory where she was essentially taken advantage of by this stereotypical frat bro.
Oh, right.
Which, by the way, there are no red herrings in this movie, none whatsoever. It is very obvious from the get-go who the antagonists are, why they are doing this.
Mm-hmm.
So we meet Imogen Poots. We meet her sisters. One of them looks slightly like Olivia Hussey. Lily Donahue, I think her name is.
Yeah, Lily Donahue.
And then this one girl who is an activist, she's trying to get a petition signed to remove an English professor played by Carrie Elwes, who just plays the biggest misogynist in this movie.
Right.
And he also speaks like Malcolm McDowell. Like, he has that British accent. Like, he over-enunciates every word that he says.
But then he's already strung off as weird from the beginning. Like, what the heck was going on in that classroom when he was, I can't remember what he was saying, but he was saying a lot of weird things like, now you guys are trying to get rid of me. And it was just like,
yeah, just incredibly on the nose. Like, he is essentially calling Imogen Poots out in front of the entire classroom.
Yeah.
For trying to get him removed from the school. And he's talking about how, women are all about instinct, men are all about intelligence. Men use their brains, women use their feelings. And it's just so insulting. And look, you can have strong female characters. You don't have to be so on the nose about how strong they are, though. Mm-hmm. To me, what makes a really compelling lead character is someone who doesn't show off how strong they are. They show how strong they are. They're not constantly telling us how strong they are.
We're strong. We're going to do this.
Like, yes. And so almost every single main character in this movie is irritating. You can't stand to be around them. You want to talk about the Mean Girls sequence, like the musical number?
Oh my gosh. Ugh. Yeah, so you're sitting, like, when I first saw that scene, I'm sitting here thinking this is probably going to be like a scene from Mean Girls where they're doing that whole Jingle Bell rock dance thing. No, it's, they make up their own, and it doesn't even sound like a Christmas song to begin with. It's just a complete musical on how men just rape women and
they
take advantage of them and stuff, and it was just odd.
They sing a version of Santa Baby, but they turn it into this thing where they're calling out the fraternity brothers that are inside the room. Here's another thing. Imogen Poots was the choreography of this musical number. Mm-hmm. She has to replace one of the girls because one of the girls gets overly drunk. Mm-hmm. What choreography? Seriously, this whole performance comes off as something a group of drunk girls would do at a club. Like, the choreography is very basic. They're basically just bouncing in place.
It's almost like they're doing the dance from Mean Girls.
The singing is awful. Mm-hmm. The scene is cringy. Mm. And, moving forward, a long time passes before we get, like, anything resembling a horror movie.
Pretty much. I mean, you had the little things here and there when the masked guy would come and kill off the characters, but it didn't start picking up until the end.
Yeah, a good majority of this movie is honestly like a CW drama. Like, all of this dramatic bullshit about how, the guy who took advantage of me is back at the school, or, I gotta convince the security guard that someone has been sending me these inappropriate DMs, which, by the way, that scene with the security guard where he's putting a
glob of mayo.
He's putting a glove of mayonnaise on this ham sandwich.
That's gross.
A metaphor for something else, I'm sure. I'm sure. But, yeah, so if we can talk about the death scenes in this movie, okay. I really want to talk about the death of the nerdy girl in this movie who kind of looks like Meg Griffin from Family Guy. She has the glasses. She has kind of the same hairstyle. She is left alone inside the sorority house.
Isn't she the same one that was missing her
Diva Cup?
Diva Cup.
Yeah, but so.
Oh my gosh.
The scares in this movie are just very poorly realized because Meg Griffin is left alone inside the sorority house. There's this static wide shot of an empty corridor. Mm-hmm. She enters one room and then she exits the room.
Her cat is meowing, which you can totally tell. She goes the opposite way where the cat's meowing on this side of the room. And you're like, okay, what are you doing? And
this scare is a complete ripoff of a sequence from Exorcist 3. Directed by William Peter Blatty, because there's a very famous jump scare in Exorcist 3 where you see an empty corridor inside a hallway. It lingers there for a while. A nurse walks into her room. She walks out of her room. And then all of a sudden, the camera zooms in very quickly, and then someone chases after her with a pair of shears. They do almost the same thing here, almost the same exact shot setup, where this girl enters the room, she leaves, she walks down the hallway, and then boom!
Oh, and then he attacks her with the Christmas lights.
He strangles her with Christmas lights. And it's like, okay, Exorcist 3, decent movie, but I mean, come on. You're not being very original here. And then the attic scene.
Oh, yeah, with the, okay, so yeah, that was like towards the end, right?
No, it was where she goes into the dark attic by herself looking for Christmas lights.
Oh, yeah, that was almost towards the build-up to the film. So you had this one girl who, there's basically the other three girls are downstairs bickering about... I'm trying to remember what they were bickering about. They were bickering about something.
They were bickering about how... No, they were bickering about how men are awful, and...
Oh, yeah.
The one female character's boyfriend is talking about how, when girls sing about how terrible men are, it's okay, but when men sing about how, terrible women are, it's bad, double standards, this isn't about equality, this is bullshit. He just storms out, and what happens to this girl in the attic?
So the other girl's like, I'm not going to deal with this, goes upstairs to go try and find some Christmas lights. She gets, which I would have to say it was kind of interesting what they did here a little bit to a degree, where you see her go to the little box. She pulls out Christmas lights. She goes over. She plugs them in. Mm-hmm. They don't come on, which her stupid line was, do they expire? Yes, lights expire, guys.
Christmas lights expire.
She unplugs it, goes back to the box, grabs another set of lights, plugs it in. They don't work. So she goes back again, grabs another set, and she plugs them in, and voila, it comes on. And I kind of predicted this happening, but you had the little empty space when she goes over to plug him in, and all of a sudden you just see his face light up with the Christmas lights.
Why did he wait for her to turn the lights on? Why didn't he just attack her then and there?
Especially if you see her going back and forth, she's there, so you could just grab her. But
it was for the audience, and like I said, the scares in this movie are just so awful. They are either incredibly typical or incredibly predictable, and I thought for a minute this movie would get a little bit better, because what happens is that these fraternity bros, which, by the way, I knew this movie was going to be bad, but I did not imagine how bad, because essentially what happens is there's a supernatural element where the fraternity bros get hold of this bust, like the statue that was modeled after the college's founder.
What was his name? Something?
Calvin Hawthorne.
Calvin Hawthorne.
The bust is magical. It has like this black ooze inside of it, and it grants the frat bros supernatural abilities. I am not making this up. This is literally what happens.
Makes them more stronger than they normally are, I guess. But
so these possessed frat boys attack the sorority house. Mm-hmm. They kill off the Olivia Hussey lookalike. And, we're left with Imogen Poots and then her activist friend. Her
death even pissed me off.
Oh, God.
I mean, okay, first of all, she's sitting there. She's already been, the arrow went through her leg. So she's already kind of bleeding. She's, I already had a feeling she was going to die. You're wounded. You're going to die. You're the weakest link. But, she's standing there with her sisters. And all of a sudden, you see this guy standing there, and she's just trying to go after him with, what was it again? She had in her hand?
I think it was like an axe, or...
She had something in her hand. But
she had something sharp in her hand.
She's going after him with it, but the whole time she's going, looking behind her, and you're like, you got this guy right here, and you're going to look behind you. If you're going to stab him, just go in and stab him, not, hesitate to do it. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, well, you just got what you deserved, because honestly, you were just messing around. You could have just ended that right then and there.
Mm-hmm. And then we're left with Imogen Poots and her activist friend, who leave the house. They drive away. Imogen Poots is trying to convince her to go to the police. No, I'm sorry. The activist friend wants to go to the police, but Imogen Poots is like, hey, the security guard didn't believe me. Do you really think the police are going to believe us? Because, they just see us as weak women. They're not going to believe us because, they're the ones who have power. They're the ones who are in control.
And this whole time, her friend's not even believing anything she's saying about, the fact that these guys are possessed, and she's seen the whole thing.
And then she looks her activist friend straight in the eye and says, I thought you were a fighter. I really try to look for the positives in the movie, but I just loathed almost every single thing about Black Christmas. We get to a climax where essentially Imogen Poots is tied to a chair. She is in this very creepy room that is filled with these hooded frat bros. Mm-hmm. Again, this sounds comedic, but it's not. It is.
We forgot to mention the introduction of her man crush.
Oh, the guy who got to look like Steve Urkel.
Yes.
Yeah.
I thought about that.
He's essentially the only decent male character in this movie.
Yeah, because he has a crush on her character, and she's extremely awkward and weird. Mm-hmm. But
they go back to the fraternity house, and Steve Urkel ends up getting, I don't know,
His
possessed.
line.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He's being like, he's being approached by the evil frat bros, and he says, "Why don't you go suck a fat fart?" Just. Oh my god. I didn't think it was possible to feel such pain during a movie, but man, it was so painful to watch this movie.
Those awkward moments, you're sitting there like, oh my god, did you just say that?
But anyway, Steve Urkel ends up being possessed momentarily. Mm-hmm. We get to that climax where Imogen Poots is tied to a chair. This room is filled with these hooded frat bros who are banging their clubs on the ground.
Oh yeah, doing the little chants and stuff.
Carrie Elwes is the cult leader. He has like his robe on. And Imogen Poots is about to get assaulted by, I guess, the founder's ghost or something. I guess it was supposed to be like the founder of the college who had apparently died, but I guess he's now like I don't know what the hell he is. He's like this supernatural entity who
has to put girls in line when they step out of it, pretty much.
Oh, yeah.
What I summed it up to be.
Because, they're supposed to be men. They can't allow women to be too independent or get too far in life.
Yeah, pretty much, without having to make them step back in place.
Like I said, I get it. I really get it, because this is obviously commenting on how these rich, privileged frat boys will often get away with anything. And I get that. And I would want to see those types of characters suffer in a horror movie. But it's just so terribly written that you can't take anything seriously. You can't buy into the commentary.
There's other ways they could have done it, to be honest.
Absolutely. But what happens is that Imogen Poots' activist friend and a bunch of other sorority sisters break in. She has that immortal line, "You messed with the wrong sisters," which I'm sure they put on the poster for this movie.
And then you have her, as she's going after him, "Suck my," and then we never get what she actually really meant to say.
Oh, yeah. We forgot to mention, they wanted to maintain a PG-13 rating with this movie, so they cut out a good chunk of the gore. Mm-hmm. It felt like they dubbed over certain lines. They maybe dubbed over certain curse words in order to maintain a PG-13 rating. And, during this big fight at the end, the activist friend has a line where she says, "Suck my..."
Nothing.
So they burn the fraternity house to the ground, and the movie finally ends, and
we are put out of our misery. I'm just kidding.
We were put out of our misery, but man, this movie was a chore to sit through.
Oh my gosh.
One of the worst movies I've seen in 2019. One of the worst horror remakes of all time. It's not as god-awful as the When Strangers Call remake.
It definitely puts, the one I thought was pretty bad was the shark one. I can't think of it.
Piranha?
No, the one that came out this year. It was a part 2.
Oh, 47 Meters Down?
Yeah.
I don't think that's a remake, though.
No, not a remake, but we're talking about the worst movies of 2019.
Oh, yeah.
And it puts that one better than this one.
This movie makes 47 Meters Down look like the original Psycho.
Right?
It makes 47 Meters Down Uncaged look like a very classy horror movie.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I'd rather sit through that again than this.
But this movie can honestly go screw itself with an iron pipe. I hated almost everything about it. It didn't have any redeeming factors. It was just...
I tried to find something good in this, and I could not.
But this movie just made it very difficult. But on the bright side, next week, we are going to be having a discussion on the original Black Christmas movie, the slasher movie that was surprisingly ahead of its time, because this came out in 1974, and it touched on issues that many horror films back then wouldn't touch on, like feminism and even abortion. Like there's an abortion plot in that movie, and it's handled very seriously and very delicately. But anyway, I am really looking forward to talking about the original Black Christmas. We're going to skip the 2006 remake because that movie is just bonkers. So Kim, let me ask you, You were talking about maybe doing like a best of at the end of the year, like a best of video.
Yeah, I think it would be really nice to kind of go and revisit some of the movies that we have reviewed and just movies that we've seen in the year 2019. Kind of just do a talk about the best of 2019 horror films.
I really like that idea, especially after sitting through something like this.
Yeah.
Anyway, guys, thank you so much for joining us in our discussion of the 2019 Black Christmas. Don't go see it. It's not worth your time. It's not worth your money. Just stay as far away from this movie as possible.
Turn on Amazon Prime and watch the original Black Christmas.
Yes. You will not be disappointed. And yeah, I think I'm just gonna go. I think I'm gonna go drink a ton of eggnog now. Bye.